Howdy all. Happy Monday. A lot of stuff happening over the weekend. We'll do some pre-show stuff here. Eck will be on a little later in the show. We'll start baseball related. We were just talking before I hit broadcast here that the Yankees have signed Neil Walker, who played second base for the Mets last year.
And the last few years.
Last few years. Now I think he can play multiple positions. So I think that
he can play third also.
Yeah, that's what this is, because I saw some reaction because Gleyber Torres is the prospect who's listed like first in Baseball America, and they think he's going to be a really good player, but he's 21, coming off I think it was an ACL injury at home. Or no, was it? It was either shoulder or ACL
injury.
Yeah, it was a season-ending injury, and I don't know how well he's doing in spring training, but I think they just wanted a little insurance, and Walker's a major league player, so there you go. Russ, you wanted to bring up something that is going to be making a comeback this year?
Yeah. I did an article after I heard about this on Sportsology.com. The bullpen cart is back, but it's only back in Arizona. So far, they're the only team to jump into it. There's a couple of interesting things. The last time a bullpen cart was used was 22 years ago. So there's a whole generation of players that have never dealt with it. And as a result, may shun it, may look at it as like, this is your dad's thing. I don't want to do it. And so there's a lot of discussion. Part of the discussion is, hey, it'll speed up the game. You know what? In April, it might speed up the game, right? But as a lot of managers start doing righty-lefty, and as I pointed out, if both teams go through 6 pitchers each, and you have to offer the bullpen cart to both teams, there's going to be a point where they're not going to want to use the bullpen cart because it absolutely will slow down the game.
Well, it'll speed up the game in September when you have 40 men on the roster and there's 20 guys in the bullpen. The thing is, it better not be an electric bullpen cart, because it'll run out of power going back and forth.
That's true.
These problems are for a sport that seemingly never finishes having problems. I just don't get it. Like, if you want to make baseball move a little faster, you put a clock, just like a shot clock, on between pitches. Batter gets one step out of the box. That's it. Once you've used it, too bad.
Yeah, I agree with the one step out of the box.
You know what? No more Mike Hargrove spinning in his helmet.
Or Derek Jeter. Derek Jeter was horrible with his
Garciaparra was worse.
Listen, Jeter was really bad at the end. Trust me. You just don't see it.
Yeah. Here's the thing. This is what I don't get. And this is a compliment to baseball players. I'm not going to take a shot at them. But in tennis on serves, got 20,000 people in Roland Garros or Flushing Meadow can hear a coin drop.
Mm-hmm.
Golf, guy teeing off, you can literally hear a fart from the middle of the fairway. Baseball, the guy's got to hit a moving target at 92 miles an hour, and you've got 70,000 people going bananas.
Yeah.
And we're worried about stepping out of the box. I got to set, it's a compliment to how good these guys are and some other stuff. And I get it.
Like everything, Peter, it's money related. They've done marketing things where the games are 3 hours, 15 minutes, 3.5 hours, up to 4 hours when it's Yankees, Red Sox, and people tune out. They're trying to get the time of the game down under 3 hours.
Yeah, purists don't care about the time of the game, but I get it. I think there's a factor to it. There is
no sport that is more beholden to purists than Major League Baseball.
Right. Yeah. No, and that's true.
People can talk about hockey. It doesn't even hold it like a candle in the wind to baseball purists.
True, because if it weren't the case, the DH would be everywhere now, and it's still not.
Exactly.
Yeah, right. If that was the case, there's. How many fights have you seen this year? There haven't been many. No. And that saddens me because I like fighting in hockey, but. People are getting excited about Ristolainen and Kadri going at it last Monday in Buffalo, and it was one punch each. It was not much of a fight, but just the thought of a fight was like, oh yeah, and then 5 seconds it was gone.
The last thing I'll say about the bullpen cart is other teams said they are now studying it, which I think is laughable. And then after the studying part, there's going to be analytics. What is this guy like when he's brought in by the bullpen cart? What is he like not brought in by the bullpen cart? Like, that will be the thing that drives me insane, will be the bullpen cart analytics. And I'm not sure it's going to last, but we'll see.
Well, I know I've seen a pitcher pull a muscle running in from the bullpen.
Yeah, but that's a rarity.
Well, but it's a rarity, but it's happened. So I think that's one of the things. Anyway, okay. One other thing I just have to mention, because Peter mentioned golf, and I have to say, I could give a crap less about Tiger Woods and his comeback and him contending for some tournament that nobody in God's green earth would have watched if it wasn't for all the attention about Tiger. It's like I have nothing. I have no personal animus toward him, but this Tiger worship is just so. It's annoying. It's like I want to shut Twitter off. Well, and I just imagine what it's going to be like, Peter, when the Masters comes around.
You know what?
He's in contention. It's going to be obscene.
It's going to be brilliant, because you know what? There are the only people more boring than hockey players are golfers.
True.
And frankly, that's a sport that needs a serious injection of personality in it. Yeah. And every time you get it, it's all staid and true and blah, blah, blah. Tiger's a deviant. He's a nut job. He's completely bonkers. He's got daddy issues. He's got no childhood. He's the normal looking Michael Jackson of a child prodigy who is completely controlled by his dad. His dad dies. He goes bonkers about this military stuff. His life story is absolutely fascinating. Yeah. The guy's had 20 back surgeries. He's tried to be a Navy SEAL, and now he's, in the twilight of his first career. In golf, you have two. You have your up to 50, then you have your Masters, your seniors tour. He's in the twilight era of that, and frankly, there's been no one to step into the shoes that he left back in 2012.
Yeah,
and they've all had shots. Spieth has had a shot. McIlroy's had a shot. Fowler, you name it. And he's interesting. So that's why he's there. And you know what?
But here's the thing, Peter. At the end of the day, we look at it and we say, if people want to say, well, look at Jack Nicklaus. He had this resurgence. He didn't have all those injuries. The injuries have taken their toll on this guy, and he'll never be the same. I don't think he'll ever win a major, ever.
No, I don't think so. Yeah. And yes, he's interesting, and that's why it's attracted so much attention, Peter. But so is a train wreck.
Yeah. But here's the thing. Tiger made every other golfer have to be better.
Yes.
He made them get fit. He made them train harder. He made them do everything. If Tiger hadn't shown up, Phil Mickelson's your poster child for golf fitness.
Right.
And I love Phil. I'm a lefty. I think Phil's an amazing athlete. I mean, he's got mad game, but that's your poster child, because he was the one who came right before Tiger. And he changed the game, and that he's back. Hey, golf's interesting. I'm all over it.
Well, all I can say, Peter, was at the height of it yesterday when Tiger was pursuing a guy who basically said after the tournament, if I don't win, I hope Tiger wins, which, basically is the reason he's saying that is because they all make money when the ratings go up and Tiger is competitive. But I was tempted on social media to basically say, go Phil. Go Mickelson, because I'm a Mickelson fan, and I can't stand Tiger in terms of the cult of personality that he draws. I think
I was blissfully unaware until Mike sent the message, so I had no idea.
Look,
my phone blew up, so I couldn't help. Anyway, all right, let's get started.
Yeah, I'm all over Tiger. Go Tiger.
Hello, Hockey World. Today is Monday, March 12th, 2018.
I'm Peter Tessier, coming in from Winnipeg.
I'm Russ Cohen from Sportsology.
And I'm Michael Agello, and this is the Hockey Buzzcast here on HockeyBuzz.com. Peter, let's start with in your neck of the woods, because when Patrick Laine scored that goal, and he's at what? He's now at 40, correct?
40, tied with Ovechkin.
Yeah, I mean, tied with Ovechkin, and it was like there was like a shocked reaction. Like, oh my God, Patrick Laine's got 40. Anybody who's been following Laine since he was drafted knows that he's this type of player, and people projected him to be as good as he has been. So I don't understand why there's such shock that he's tied with Ovechkin and having a great year.
I you know what? I just don't, tell you the honest truth. I'll say this, and this is going to get the ire of some people out there. I think some of the Eastern media bias that comes with things, particularly in Canada, in that the debate was settled that Matthews was better than Laine last year. And Matthews is a more complete player. That's not the argument. But the fact that Laine has now touched the hallowed ground of Matthews' 40 goals last season, you know, is part in driving this. Oh, we didn't think he could do it because he didn't do it last year. I think there's a little bit of that there. And frankly, you've got a team that's basically been in the top 5 since the 3rd week of the season in the NHL that barely gets a blip on national media radar here.
Right.
And it happens. You can't ignore it anymore. There's a record being done. And my current blog that I put up on Saturday talks about and shows some examples when you adjust scoring for errors. Laine's the best in the teenage years. He is absolutely the best. And where he's fit with shooting percentage and stuff. And it should be more of a conversation point, not to draw attention to Laine, but just because there's something a little special going on. And that's should interest all hockey fans and all hockey media.
I agree.
Because that's what sells tickets. We like it when records fall. Sports likes it when people challenge things that haven't been done before.
Right.
And back to our earlier thing with Tiger, that's why people liked him in the first place. He was doing things no one had seen for a long time. And Laine, and hopefully other players too, are going to do that as well. And I think Matthews will in turn too.
Yeah, I was in front of him when in the locker room when he talked about the 40th, and he wasn't happy that day because they lost. He said maybe in a day he'll be happy about it. And as we are now into Monday, he said he'd be okay if he tied the season with Ovechkin because he loves Ovechkin. All that's great, but I did tell Mike after the game, I called him and I said, to be honest, Patrick Laine is the most dangerous guy on the power play in the National Hockey League. It's no longer Ovechkin. It's really Laine because he's got additional size that Ovechkin doesn't have, which makes it more of a matchup problem. And because of the other great players that are on that Winnipeg power play, you have to, if you pay any attention to Laine, you're screwed in other ways. So he gets to really bomb the puck a lot. And it's inevitable that he is going to score. If you get 3 or 4 power plays a game with that team, that he's going to score a goal.
Yeah, I mean, and that goal against Philadelphia was a howitzer right from the face-off dot. But Peter, I remember, and I'll always remember that game, that first matchup between Matthews and Laine last year when Laine tied the game late in the 3rd period, and it was essentially maybe a little further out from top of the face-off circle. But I was telling Russ, it's like, from what I've watched from Winnipeg's power play, they purposely, he's not playing the half boards. He's playing up more toward the point, and he pulls out the defender on the penalty kill, and he either shoots the puck if he has the open lane, or he opens it up for somebody down low. So it's perfect for that power play.
They had him down low too, almost kind of out in front of the crease, kind of in the high, in sort of the medium slot for a bit too. And he was getting looks in there because he's got such a quick release, but he's easier to contain there. And they got him off the half wall. And I always felt that Laine, once he got his skating and his sort of timing with skating, he could be a little bit what Marcus Naslund was like, but on the other side, where Naslund could peel off
not Marcus Naslund with the Rangers. I just feel like we should point that out.
Yeah. Marcus Naslund with the Canucks.
The Canucks when he
would peel off the half wall and take and rip his wrist shot, because Naslund had a very underrated wrist shot.
He did.
So I kind of felt like he would do that, but they've changed it. And I know there's been some articles in The Athletic about it, that he's simulating what Ovechkin's doing. But one of the things that Laine's changed is that when he handles the puck now, you don't see him do east-west moves. He had a penchant to try and do a dangle. He had a penchant to try and get around guys, and he's sticking north-south because he's buying himself more room and keeping himself out of trouble. Like, he's figured out a little more how to buy space, and all good shooters eventually do that.
He did, and I saw that 5-on-5. There was a play where he was sort of not in the crease, but he's probably like, 5 steps back, and he was in Provorov's area. And once Provorov felt like he was at the point of he can't leave that area anymore, he left him to Raffl, and Raffl didn't get up close to cover him. Yeah. He just sort of faintly waved his stick, and Laine detected that and got a great shot on net, probably like a 15, 18-foot shot that Mrazek made a last-second save on. So that is something that I've noticed in his game, where he is making that extra space now, and he's going to get more goals as a result. He will.
Yeah. Well, here's a question I have for you, Peter, because I the speculation, because Laine is eligible to sign the extension next July. You've got Wheeler 1 year away from being a UFA, so his contract will be up at the end of the 2019 season. You have Kyle Connor, whose contract will be up the same time that Laine is. You've got Morrissey, who's up this year. You've got Trouba, who's up this year. I know that there's money dropping off. I know Enstrom is dropping off. I know Sean Matthias is dropping off. But that's a lot of money. It's like, who's going to be the guy left standing when the music stops?
There is going to be some musical chairs, to follow on your analogy here, Mike, and no one's really sure where it's going to go. There is belief that the Jets will play it tight to the cap they're right there now. Like they're $100,000 out because the cap sites, including ours, don't throw in the bonuses, but they have almost 4 million of bonuses coming due. So they're right there.
Right.
The question is what will they do for a backup goalie? Because they could try and trade Steve Mason, maybe take a third of his salary or half. That's going to give him an extra $2 million. Mm-hmm. And then there's the very confusing situation with Tyler Myers, and he comes up for a deal as well after next year.
Correct.
And Myers he's put up points. He's had a very concerning season for a lot of fans, and I don't know if that sentiment goes into the management as well. The one thing is the Jets provided him with a lot of support last year when his wife and child were a very well documented issue with his newborn son.
Sure.
And TSN did a little special on it with Sarah Oleski. It was very good. And that kind of thing is the stuff that this organization will do, because they feel there's value to other players to know that you want to be here because this is the way we'll treat you. This is the support you'll get away from the ice and everything. So I'd have a hard time believing that they'd cut bait with Myers simply because of what they've gone through with him. But then again, sports is a cruel industry. Mm-hmm. But the other one I could see happening is Dustin Byfuglien. I think there is the possibility that after next season, the Jets would maybe explore, moving Byfuglien. And that frees up 7.8 or 7.6, I think.
7.6, yeah.
And, there are still teams who would love a Dustin Byfuglien. Do they want him at 7.6? No, but maybe at 5 or 6 they do.
And only for 2 more years after next year.
Yeah. So I don't think the Jets went into the Stastny deal, and I don't think they have structured the signing Ehlers, because Ehlers' increase comes in next year, without understanding where they're going with salary. Yeah. And if the salary cap rises again, mm-hmm. and then again, which is semi-predicted to do, what are we at? We're at an 81 million salary cap potentially.
Well, yeah, it's 77 this year. They think that the PA will negotiate a middle of the road increase next year, because they don't want to increase escrow. So they think 81, 82, maybe 83 at the most next year.
Yeah. So then it becomes possible, but not without some sacrifice. And the other thing, and it always comes back to this, and we all know this, and I'm a broken record for saying it, until we understand where the situation is with Jacob Trouba,
right?
You don't know anything with this team yet.
And that's the situation, Peter, that I can't see them nickel and diming it with Blake Wheeler. He's too important. You know, Line A is the franchise for the next decade. They may wait until the final year of his entry level deal and not do it a year proactively. But I think it benefits them to do it proactively, because if he puts up another 40 goal year, then you're talking $10 million a year. So
well,
I mean,
there's people who think that's already on the table right now.
Right. It could be.
It could be.
Here's what
you got to buy the UFA years.
I think Trouba will get dealt at the draft. I think that's going to be what happens to him. I think Wheeler will get signed. He definitely will get kept, but he's not going to get a massive contract. I think they will bridge deal Kyle Connor, because this is his first good year.
Right.
So they'll skirt that. He has 22 goals. He'll get a nice bump, but they'll skirt that. And then either next year or in a year, they're going to move Christian Vesalainen in. So I think Little will be gone, and they'll save on Little's contract.
Yeah.
Little's not that costly, though. He's at 5'2", and
but that's costly enough when you could bring in an 18 or 19-year-old on an ELC.
Yeah.
And you got to remember, Little right now, I mean, while he's technically on the second line, he's really, that's more of a third line right now.
Right.
And the Stasny Ehlers line A line is your second line.
Right.
And also, and Russ, I think you make a really good point about Kyle Connor, is Kyle Connor's had very plumb minutes and line mates.
Yes.
Right. Like you when he's been moved, if things aren't going for him, when he's been moved down a bit, the offense dries up pretty quick.
Yeah.
And that's fine. He's a young player. He's still, but you know what, when you're playing with Scheifele and Wheeler, you've got a pretty nice set of crutches on either side of you to get you through.
And we forgot one, and we forgot one name, and it'll be an important name, and that's Hellebuck. Hellebuck's contract is up after this year, and I don't think he can make a case based off of one good year to be in the, Corey Crawford $6 million plus.
He'll get a darling kind of deal.
Right. I think he'll get more than Mason. He'll get 4.5, 4.75 a year for 4 or 5 years. Yep. And, and then if he plays the way he's played this year, then that's great value for a good young goaltender. Yeah. So,
well, here's the other one too, Mike, another name, Josh Morrissey.
Yeah.
He's played number 1 pairing all year. He's a workhorse. Knock on wood. He doesn't get injured. I'm not sure. I think he fits in the Ellis Yossi marketplace. Yeah. With a little bit of inflation, but you never know, right?
But I think Trouba will be gone. Like, he doesn't want to be there long term. Yeah. He'll get traded at the draft. That'll help cure some of this problem. Mason will definitely get dealt too if someone's willing to pay part of his contract. If not, then they're going to be stuck with him as a backup. Like, that's the way it is.
Peter, you named the two most cost-effective, two of the best contracts for teams in the entire league. The deal that Ellis is on, which is under $3 million, and Yossi, who's a Norris Trophy level defenseman, who's making less than $5 million. Both of them are going to hit the jackpot whenever their deals come up. I think Yossi's is a couple years, and I think Ellis is after next year.
Here's something I would expect. I would think in this offseason, you will see the Islanders reach out and try and work a deal for Steve Mason, because they'll be able to get him at like $2.5 million or something.
Yeah. I think they should. I think the Jets should listen to that. The biggest question right now, though, is Michael Hutchinson. And this sort of was really not a big news story until it was kind of came out in a very funny way via Leah Hextall of The Athletic. She said in an article when she went one-on-one with him that he's asked for a trade request. But no one's really made noise about that. Well, Hutchinson's been a decent, capable backup, although he hasn't played, and I'm not sure how he fits into things long term, because if he doesn't want to be there, then he doesn't want to be there. So the risk for the Jets is you're probably going to lose Hellebuck to free agency. Someone's going to pick him up, and you might need to trade Mason to get to save cap space, but you're still going to have to pay someone. So they're going to have to find a backup goalie.
Yeah.
That let's assume they retain.
Maybe Adam Comrie will be ready by then.
Yeah. Or Eric Comrie, maybe. But,
Eric Comrie, sorry.
But maybe he is. But then you've got, say you're paying $2 million a Mason salary or half, say 50%. Let's just use 50% because it's easy. So about $2 million. He's at 4.5. So then you got to sign someone for $1 million less to make it make sense. So it's definitely a balancing act, and it'll be really interesting to see how Cheveldayoff does this.
And this is not unique to. I mean, we've been talking about the Jets for 20 minutes, but this is like there are other teams like, and we can talk about Toronto too. They have similar situations, and there are a number of teams that are on the cusp of being contenders, or maybe even legitimate contenders right now. That how they do these contracts in the next couple of years is going to affect whether they can be a contender for 5, 6, 7 years, or 2 or 3, and then they're just crushed by cap restrictions.
We need to talk about one guy now, because there's like hysteria going on online and even in the chat room about Christopher Gibson. So let's bring up Christopher Gibson for a minute.
Christ, okay.
Just because he made a nice 50-save performance and got a win doesn't mean A, he's going to be re-signed by the Islanders, or B, be their backup next year. This is like Cinderella, and Cinderella will definitely that moment will end. The glass slipper will never get to Christopher Gibson. Like, it's just, look, I get the Islanders fans, and even just fans of hockey, are sort of looking like, who's going to be that goalie for him? They don't have that goalie in house. They don't.
Or if he is in house, he's in Russia right now.
Well, no, he's a goalie till 2020, so he's not coming anywhere soon. Linus Soderstrom will come over next year, but you can't throw him into the NHL. He's going to have to go to the AHL.
And that's why the Mason
would make sense.
Yeah, I'll tell you who would also make sense. Similar cap hit, and I think he's burned his bridge in his current location. How about Jake Allen in St. Louis? I don't think Jake Allen. I don't think Jake Allen is long for St. Louis. His troubles basically cost. I mean, there were other considerations, but his troubles this year in the second half cost him a playoff.
I think the Islanders will cheap out and go for Mason, because Winnipeg will pick up some of the freight.
Maybe.
But Allen would be a good solution too. But Christopher Gibson is not the answer.
Okay, let's go through some of the things in the weekend. First, goalie interference is back, folks. I mean, I'm sick of talking about it, but the story never goes away. I know, but we sort of have to, based on how subjective it is. And again, it was a meaningless goal in the sense that the game was 4-0 at the time. But Brian Dumoulin cuts to the net. Pittsburgh versus Toronto. It's 4-0. It's 4-0 Leafs. Dumoulin is pushed into the crease by Ron Hainsey. There's light contact between Dumoulin and Frederik Andersen's mask. I don't think it was anything that prevented Andersen from trying to make the save, but they call it no goal and give Dumoulin a penalty for goalie interference. Now, this is what I mean, Peter. I think this is going to give defense, and not like they don't have this idea already. In the playoffs, a goaltender is potentially going to get hurt because defensemen, when in doubt, are going to shove opposing forwards into the crease, because if they score the goal, they can wave it off as a no goal or for goalie interference, and it could hurt a goaltender. Look,
I completely agree, and this is, again, we've talked about this so many times, and I saw the thing and I just rolled my eyes, and it's like, how can this possibly be called back? And then I said, you know what? The Leafs have been jobbed so many times this season on bad goalie interference calls. Like, it's just the equalize out, and so
everybody has.
Yeah. But that's the kind of one where a guy like Mike Babcock should say, we've had this experience in the past where I haven't understood it, and I don't understand that one. That should have been a goal. And that's the kind, and I've said this before, this is the kind of thing that needs to come out from the coaching fraternity to support the other guys too, to say, look, I want to win, and I want an extra goal as much as the next guy, but I want to understand what the rule is, and the rule, the way that was called, doesn't make sense to me. They don't have to criticize the ref. They don't have to criticize the official. Just say it doesn't make sense that was a goal.
Well, they've been on both sides. They got a Hainsey goal a couple weeks ago that counted, that shouldn't have counted. The goal in Buffalo, Johan Larsson, he basically kicked out Anderson's left pad and pulled him out of the crease as he's going by him to score a goal. And then this one on Saturday. And, Babcock was very forthcoming after the game in Buffalo on Monday. And he says, to the league, let's get this straightened out. And apparently the reaction was from the league is sending out a notice to all teams to stop criticizing the league. And I'm like, I'm sorry, Ross. Sorry to bore you, but I'm sorry. When a team gets screwed over in the playoffs, a fan base.
Then we'll talk about it.
Okay. I think it needs to be talked about now.
Oh.
Anyway, Brad Marchand, go.
Oh. You know what? I want to see happen is I want to see Brad Marchand and Corey Perry go head-to-head, one-on-one on the ice for like a week and just see who's standing at the end. Like, who can lower the bar so that they take out the other guy for good. I mean, both of those guys, they drive me nuts because they have no reason to do the things they do. They're talented hockey players, and they just keep doing it over and over again. And it drives me
in their
mental.
DNA.
If Hayek, I just want to let me make this point. If any other player in the NHL had done what Marchand did on that play to declare, I would have thought he was trying to get out of the way. It was incidental. With Marchand, I think it was purposeful, especially the fact that after he knocks Duclair down, what looked to be like a flying body block, but it wasn't. He made contact with his head. He turned around, looked at Duclair on the ice, and made no kind of, he was sort of like nonplussed about the fact that what he did, because the guy's writhing in pain on the ice.
Oh, yeah, because he does it all the time. He's immune to it. Like, if you play against Brad Marchand, you're going to get kneed at some point. He's just a more talented Brian Marchment. I mean, he does it all the time. He's dirty every game. Bruins fans love it. Everybody else hates it, but that's the way it is. And the league really is pretty much okay with it at this point, because otherwise he would be getting suspended left and right like Sean Avery.
Well, I was surprised he didn't even get a hearing.
Nothing. You didn't even get a call.
I mean, look, that was maybe his best accidentally on purpose move I've ever seen.
Correct.
It was Academy Award worthy of how good he managed to get out of the way and then take the guy out at the same Montclair, right? Or Duclair. And it was phenomenal. I mean, that's a dream scenario for him. I mean, he's like licking his chops at that, and good on him, I guess. Like, I mean, as much as it drives me nuts, he's not the only one who would do it.
What'll happen with Brad Marchand is the same thing that happened back in the Bathgate era when Gordie Howe kept spearing guys. It will reach ahead at some point, and something bad will end up happening.
Yeah.
Well, and that was the thing.
Nothing is done for it. In games, something will happen with the players.
I heard a former NHLer, and I can't remember. Oh, it was Greg Gilbert, a former NHLer on Toronto radio, basically saying, this was 25 years ago. Somebody like Dave Brown or would take him to the cleaners. Would just smoke him. And
somebody still might do that late in the season with nothing to lose.
It's possible.
Well, that's Chicago right now.
Yeah.
But
he might do it to the wrong team who's got nothing to lose late in the season. Yeah. That's what you have to worry about as a Bruins fan, honestly.
Yeah.
Yeah, but see, the thing is, like, a team like Toronto who's going to play Boston in the playoffs has to be ready to answer the question, what do you do with Marchand? Obviously he's one of their best forwards. He can score like crazy, and he gives you that sort of that right now uncharacteristic skill set of being not only a great scorer, but a great rat as well. And how do you address that? I mean, Russ, is this the time, like, and somebody was offering the suggestion, does this mean you put Matt Martin in the lineup? And I'm like, oh, only if Matt Martin goes after Marchand.
Correct. If that is the objective, then you put him in. But that's the only way you put him in.
So if you have someone who plays that role, you have to have them on the ice at the same time as Marchand. So are you going to take that risk with Marchand, Bergeron, and Pasternak when Bergeron's back? You're not going to do that. That's suicide.
You would only do it, Peter, at home when you could like have him on. You get the last change. You put Marchand out there. You put Martin out there, and you say, "Go get him."
You know what? I don't even see. I get it, but the Leafs have their own weapon of mass destruction that way, and his name's Nazem Kadri. just get.
Yeah, but you don't want him getting suspended before the playoffs. That's
right.
Exactly.
No. I mean, in the playoffs. Well, if Marchand's going to do it, let Kadri do it. And Russ, as well as I do, the refs turn a bit of a more of a blind eye.
Yeah, it depends. It depends how much it escalates.
But if they're not going to, I mean, does Kadri get away with any less than Marchand?
Yes, he gets away with less. He tries as much and gets away with less. I think.
Yeah, he's more. Hey, yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Cool.
I mean, maybe he does. I don't know. But I mean, he can play the greasy, dirty thing as well as Marchand can. So if you're going to go head to head, let him do his thing.
He hasn't done it as much, Peter, recently because Babcock wants him to match up against top centers.
Yeah.
Like he was getting in Crosby's kitchen a little bit on Saturday, and that's what I think he doesn't want him to go out and scumbucket somebody.
No, I don't mean scumbucket, but here's the thing: in the back in the the late decade, the late aughts, the first decade of the new millennium, when we had those 3 years of the Canucks and the Blackhawks playing each other in the first or second round.
Yes.
You had some guys on that team that drove the Canucks mental. Brouwer on a face-off once, he had his stick, so the linesman couldn't see, and they were behind the linesman, and he had his stick, and he was drilling it in behind Daniel Sedin's skate on his cap. And he was basically digging for gold with a pick.
I love this stuff.
And that's the kind of stuff that needs to happen. Like you got it, and there's only certain guys who have that in their DNA and think about it. And sometimes you just, and you know what happened eventually was, what did Mike Gillis do to solve that problem? Before 2011, when he realized this is the year of our best chance, he got Maxim Lapierre and Rafi Torres.
Yeah, and he already had Alex Burrows, and remember Jarkko Ruutu was a real saint, wasn't he?
Oh, yeah.
And there you go. And I've always said this: teams need a-holes.
Yeah,
you just
do, but the problem is with
but you need a-holes who can play.
Well, he's the team's best scorer, so that does present a problem when refs start calling things because it does affect their team. But me personally, I call him for everything he does at this point.
But and I want to bring you in on this.
Yep.
Marchand, the thing that's annoying is and Marchand's been suspended, but he's like Rush just said, he's their best scorer. So he gets a 5-game suspension where somebody else gets a 10-game suspension. It's that favoritism that the NHL does with a guy like Ovechkin, who's cheap as they come and doesn't get suspended or gets a lighter sentence. And I can't stand that. I don't care if it's a fourth line goon or a top line winger, it's the offense. It's not the player.
Well, I agree. It should be that way. Of course, there is, there's no question there's a little bit of
favoritism.
I want to say nepotism, but that's not the right word. Favoritism. I think that's definitely the case here. And I mean, he is one of the best players in the league. He does do things. I mean, it's funny because someone asked me the other day about Marchand. If we were in the 1980s, would Marchand be considered like a suspendable player? Because he does stuff that's old school fine in some ways. Where some players just do stuff that's dirty all the time. But his stuff that he does is definitely.
I put him in the old in the Pat Verbeek category.
Yeah,
I don't put him in the Dale Hunter category. I don't see Marchand running Pierre Turgeon.
More like Bobby Clarkish. I was almost thinking there's stuff that he does that's really dirty. But he also does have a tendency to just I don't know to get away with it. Sure, because he's a better player, but also it's just kind of the way he plays. His stuff is usually, I don't know, not necessarily premeditated as much as it is just, annoying, retaliatory in the middle of a game.
Here's the weird thing, okay? He has been suspended from what I can count 6 times, but nothing more than 5 games. And that's not following what everybody else seems to think the progressive suspension policy is of the league. And so why isn't he ever suspended more than 5 games? Well, we just gave you the answer because of the importance to the team, but it's not fair.
Well, I mean, this year, he plays in the All-Star game despite his suspension. There's certain things, and that's me as well. That to me was odd in and of itself. It really sends a strange message out too.
Well, and if you're telling me, and by the way, I have to say I loved the hit, but it was dirty. If he didn't get suspended 5 games for submarining Sammy Sallow in 2012, you'll remember that one, Peter.
Oh yeah.
I don't know if he'll ever get suspended more than 5 games because he just undercut him and flipped him.
He's been suspended for elbowing, slew footing, the low bridge, slew footing, clipping. Like, this, and to be honest, the clipping is the knee to knee stuff.
Yeah.
That's what he does almost every game.
And last week he got fined for diving.
Yeah.
So, all right, we saved it for you when you came on, and Ross, you got to give us your opinion on one John Tavares.
Yeah, I've been putting together a timeline, talking to people who cover the island, people who are in New York, and I went back and looked online over the weekend. And last January was when Tavares said, well, the contract's up in a year. We're going to start talking, and it's going to take a while, but we're going to make progress with it. And, just be patient. Well, we're past that now. And from what we can tell, not much is happening, or they would have a signing already. Yeah. So there's that. Then the other day, 2 days ago, when they had lost their 7th in a row, which they've since snapped, he said it's not much fun. And then the next day he sort of recanted that a little by saying, look, anybody would say that, don't read too much into it. But again, you have to read something into it because they didn't do anything at the deadline. They're not going to make the playoffs. He isn't re-signed. They're going to tell him what they're going to do for the future, I'm sure. But unless they're spending a lot of money after him, it's not looking good for John Tavares staying in New York. And I'll tell you that a friend of mine, Mark Roseman, was talking to the New York media because I was on his show 2 weeks ago talking about this, and then again yesterday. And what he brought out last night was he said people were split 50-50 down the middle in the New York media, that 50% felt like he is going to go somewhere else, and 50% thought, well, it's not going to be the Rangers because, hey, Jeff Gordon's sticking to his plan. So, the Ranger media was like 50-50 that he'd come to the Rangers. That's really what I was meant to say.
That's interesting.
But I think that's because they're listening to the Jeff Gordon thing, thinking they're taking that on Facebook.
I mean, that's a weird response because any GM will tell you. I mean, you can hear the press conference. Someone says to Jeff Gordon, Larry Brooks, this is not part of your plan,
right?
And Jeff Gordon says, we just signed John Tavares,
right?
It doesn't matter if it's part of your plan or not. Like John Tavares is always part of your plan. Like it's not like he's 37. It's not like we're not talking about that.
It's abandoned when a 28-year-old superstar is
right. That's part of anyone's plan. I mean, if that's not part of your plan, then what do you say? What's your expression, Peter? Your famous expression?
Sorry.
Hope is not a plan.
Hope is not a plan.
Yeah. Right. So that's just like that to me is it's written on my desk upstairs.
I wish somebody would have said that in Toronto 20 years ago.
But here's the thing about Tavares that I got into last night and again this morning. Actually, right after I put my article up, I had a GM call me this morning, which is rare. You usually get that thing, and because he said, you're onto something with the fact that Toronto, could offer a draft pick or a couple picks to actually go and try to sign him before the draft. And it makes sense. But the one thing he brought up, which was really interesting, is he said you have to ask yourself, what's that worth? Is it worth a first round draft pick to sign him? And yeah, it is.
I think it is. I've said that
flat out worth it. And he said, you could sit there and say you're going to get him for nothing, but the reality of from our perspective of getting it done earlier, and getting it done before the draft and being able to then make decisions based on that. You don't have to go get a center in this situation. You can go out and get different things. You can go out and make a different move. And then he said also the fact that by trading for his rights, you can then sign him for 8 years versus 7 years.
Well, I don't know about that.
That's what he said.
I thought that was the case, but I thought there was a clarification that the player has to be on your roster before the trade deadline to be able to offer the 8th year. That's a circumvention of the cap.
It's so funny because I'll tell you what, it's like you might be right, and I swear on anything here that a GM told me that he heard that too, but he's not sure. And I put a text into and this is funny that these kind of rules you think the general manager would know that rule right up, but they don't.
Yeah,
they don't. Yeah. Part of the reason too is if you think you want to spend that kind of asset allocation to get to Tavares early, is you probably have a pretty good understanding that there's someone else who wants to get him too.
Yeah.
Or that you have an indication that he would be amenable. You're not going to trade a first-round pick to get 3 extra days to negotiate with him. You're going to find out either from his agent, or you're going to get permission from the Islanders to talk to his agent if they think that there's no way that they can sign him, to sort of get some parameters on, okay, what would you be looking for, this and that. Right. Yeah. They're not going to trade a first-round pick. I don't think any team would be trading a first-round pick or a package of draft picks to get access to a player a couple days early and then find, the Buffalo Sabres did that back in the day with, the Islanders did it back in the day with Christian Ehrhoff, and then they flipped the rights to the Sabres, and the Sabres signed them. So you're not going to take that risk. I think they only get that they have inside information that they know he's amenable to coming to Toronto.
And,
go ahead.
You connect the dots, right? Like, who on the Leafs roster knows Tavares? There's your conduit. I mean,
Kadri knows.
They talk. They all talk.
Of course.
Tavares is from that area, and obviously that he's got. I mean, there is a group of his friends that I know pretty well that have been pushing for years, for this. That are pushing him, and I know if they're talking to me about it, how much they're talking to him about it.
But that's.
I know that's not everything, and I know that doesn't necessarily mean that this or that. I mean, and a lot can be written into that, but the bottom line is, you've got. I think early on, the early on favorites for Tavares are basically 4. That I can see, and this is like really early returns projections and all that stuff. But to me, it's the Rangers, who I think absolutely are. I can't imagine anybody saying they wouldn't be in on it.
Right?
No, they'll be in on it.
Yeah, I mean, for him, it makes more sense. I mean, you can stay in the area. Whether or not you move be based on, where the practices are, you may want to move, but different situations. But, if his family's really happy where they are, he's already been traveling to Brooklyn, it might be fine. The biggest question with the Rangers when I talk to somebody today would be, does he want to be a part of a rebuild? Again, like he's been, and does he want to go to a team?
Once he gets there, the rebuild stops.
I was going to say,
you the Rangers, right?
The Rangers, and you just went on steroids.
Yeah. This is the Rangers, and the Rangers do things quickly, and you also already have Lundqvist in place, and having a goalie like that in place, that you're never rebuilding when you have a goalie like Lundqvist in place. In my mind, you're not breaking it down. You can't possibly finish in last overall or whatever like that. So, and then Toronto, I think is definitely a possibility.
They'll be in on it now.
They'll dedefinitely be part of it. It will affect things. They will have to make some decisions, in the future.
Let me just go down that road, because I've thought about this in terms of, in connection with Stamkos, because everybody, and, we heard the same things, the family thing, the friends thing, and then he ended up opting to stay in Tampa, but things could be different. You never know. Well, but if the Leafs genuinely go after Tavares, and remember, Matthews' contract is up after next year, but the indications are they're going to try to get him locked up on the 8-year extension, like Edmonton did with McDavid a year early.
Okay, actually, Mike, sorry, I'm looking at the CBA. What they can do is the sign and trade. So the Islanders can sign him to the 8 years and trade him to wherever for that deal.
Right.
Yeah, that's probably
but they can't trade his rights, and then the other team, right? So and that's what I thought, and because we came upon somebody last year who they were talking about the 8-year deal, and I didn't think it would work. But okay, so sign and trade makes sense. Then the team gets the draft, and that would have to be before the draft unless they want to trade a 2019 pick.
Right.
Now the thing is with Toronto, if you sign Tavares, and I would think that if they sign Tavares, they're going to sign Matthews at the same time, get them both done.
Yep.
Then you're talking, okay, you're either having to trade William Nylander, who's an RFA, or you're having to trade Nazem Kadri. I would lean that they would trade Nylander, because Nylander's an RFA. He's having a really good year. They'd have to probably pay him over $6 million. The comparables are Ehlers or a Pasternak. So that's talking $6 to $7 million on a new deal, a long deal. Kadri's locked up at $4.5 million for another 4 years, I believe. That gives you Matthews, Tavares, and Kadri up the middle. I think that rivals what Pittsburgh's got right now, what Nashville's got. Yeah. And then you have a lot of inexpensive young wingers that can fill in the roles. But I mean, it also, they would probably be trading Nylander or Marner to get the defenseman, because that, there you go, Peter. It's like if Trouba's out there, and I'm just using him as an example, that's the type of player that a team that has Trouba, or a team that has a Tyson Barrie or something like that, they're going to want a Nylander in that kind of deal.
Right. Yeah. I mean, the thing, I mean, just let's just play ball with that thinking, Mike. I just don't think the Jets would make that deal, because they don't need, they're loaded on the wings right now, particularly with Vesalainen potentially coming over.
Jets would do that either. But I think that it's the kind of,
but it's right framework.
Carolina would deal with them.
I mean, I think that Tyson Barrie could be a player that could come into play in a situation like that. Maybe. Something along those lines.
I do believe, and I know that he's only played a limited amount of games. I think that Nylander has gone a long way in a very small window this year to start proving to people he can play center.
Yeah,
he played center on Saturday against Malkin. Didn't score any points, but was responsible enough defensively. I think he's moving and convincing people that he can be a center. Right. And if we're talking a team like Carolina, with the bevy of defensemen from Falk to Slavin to Pesci to Hannafin, who's an RFA, they need that top line center or a second line center, depending on what you think Nylander is. That might be. I mean, there's a large number of different ways you could go, but the first step is that's the biggest and the one that I question the most. I just don't know whether Tavares wants to go back home and deal with the pressure of going home. But I think the one thing in Toronto's favor is that he's not coming home as the savior. They have Matthews. They have the goaltender.
I think it helps a lot, and he's been the savior in New York for a long time. So he's played that role.
There is another factor here, and before we start naming other teams, there are a lot of Islander fans now that are dumping on John Tavares online. I see things like, you used to be in second in the league in scoring, now you're 20th. Are you giving up? John Tavares, are you proving it? Are you proving yourself? What have you done for us? Like, there's all this stuff now because Islander fans sense that he might be leaving. I'm not saying it's a big part of the fan base, but it's a part of it. And, I'm sure Tavares sees that too, and probably does think about that, because he probably thinks, hey, if I am the guy and it hasn't happened here, what's going to make me think it's going to happen here in the next 7 years?
Well, we talked about this on Friday with Kevin, and Russ, would you say he was rather definitive that he didn't think that Tavares had a chance of going to Montreal, even though Montreal?
Yeah, he seemed pretty.
Yeah, I don't think Montreal is the place either. I mean, the other places I think you're looking at Detroit for sure. Detroit will definitely be one of them, and Buffalo for sure. I mean, and those are two teams that'll definitely take stabs at this.
I'll give you two more. One I think is logical, simply because they seem to be in on everything, which is Vegas, because they have the cap space. I told Russ this one off the air. I think it makes a lot of sense. Is the New Jersey Devils? They got a ton of cap space. Probably wouldn't have to move anywhere, or if so, not too far. And they're on the ascendancy with the young guys that they have, with Taylor Hall being an MVP candidate, with the goaltender there. That's an enticing looking team. If you add Tavares to that,
Tavares and Hall.
Tavares and Hall.
Yeah, I will tell you this. Yeah. The only thing I said to Mike after he said that to me was, the Sixers to date have only really paid one player a long-term deal, in Joel Embiid, and I don't know if they would do that with Tavares in hockey, because Embiid, while he's playing great, he's not playing a lot of games. Like, he's played 54 games, which is the most in his career, and now he's starting to have to rest again. And I think if you're an owner, you're probably thinking to yourself, well, look, I just paid this guy, and I'm not getting the results I'd hope for. They're good when he's out there. Am I going to pay now a John Tavares? So I don't know. I don't know if the Devils will go that deep. They may not.
The Devils are also they're having a great year, or they're having a good year. But they're not having a great year, and Hall's having an amazing year, obviously. But the Devils
Kincaid. We should give Keith Kincaid credit. He's got 17 of the 35 wins for that team.
No, he's been really good, and they've got they've built up a solid team. But I don't think they're to me. If I'm Tavares, I'm not looking at them like they are on their way. Like I think that, and if we see the Devils do this another year, then okay, you can start to say that. But the Devils have been up and down for a couple of years now, and this is they're definitely on their way in the right direction. But are they quick enough? Like where we go to the Rangers, that's a different situation. The Rangers aren't as good as the Devils right now, but have the potential to be better than the Devils quicker, if in that situation. And the Rangers are the Rangers too. Don't forget that.
Right.
That this is Madison Square Garden. This is some place where players absolutely love to play.
If they pulled in Tavares, they'd be able to get some other players cheaper. They would.
And that changes things, and that invigorates Zuccarello and all the other players that you have there already. So it really changes things quickly.
But the Rangers have done very well at the trade deadline with what they've got. You add a player like Tavares in, that turnaround happens quick, and it also buys you a little bit of time too, because it would be a very shrewd move. Now, the other team, I mean, if you just take teams who have money and are looking to do something, and I just typed it out there in our chat, but Carolina, why not?
Right, but would he want to go there with the way that owner is portraying himself right now? I think he would shy away from that.
I mean, but there's the reason I think again that if you're a team like the Maple Leafs and you have an inkling that you have a chance, you're keeping him away from everyone else who might make that move. And I think exactly. and I think just as much as they know Tavares is open to, if this is the case, open to coming to Toronto, they probably have their feet on the ground knowing that there's other teams open to Tavares going there, and you want to make sure they don't get a foothold in before it's too late.
Yeah, but this is this one crack at completely unfettered, unrestricted free agency, and that 5-day window.
I think you'll get 2 cracks. To be honest, I think you'll get 2 cracks
potentially. But I mean, right now he's 20. He's 27, going on 28. You assume that he's going to sign. And maybe you're right, Russ. Maybe he signs a 5 or 6 year deal.
He might not want an 8-year deal.
Right, and maybe at age 33 he can sign another long-term contract, and that's very possible. But
so that's a good point, because what he's making a bet right now that if I take X amount of dollars and we know it's going to be big, I have to be certain that this team's on the right trajectory and has the right staff in place to get to that point where I want to be, which is competing for a championship.
Right.
So you're right. Maybe taking like a 4-year deal at $9 million per is better than taking a 7-year deal at $8 million per.
Well, I mean,
even if those are, and I'm throwing numbers out.
No, I know, but this is the thing about that. This is the thing. This is the problem. If you're the other end of that is if you're gambling and you're going to a team that say you're going to Detroit. Okay, Detroit's a rebuilding team. They have some young talent for sure, and they could be very good in the future, but you don't know where it's going to be. If you go to another team where you don't succeed, like, you go for 4 years to a Detroit where you haven't really succeeded for, all these years on the island, suddenly your value comes down quite a bit. Like wherever Tavares goes, there's going to be a big expectation on him to, that to me is why you're going to sign a long-term deal. If you go to Detroit, you're signing a long-term deal because you're
in Detroit, but I think there is a possibility that he only goes 6 or 7 and not 8, simply because he wants another deal. I think he's on a similar career path as Joe Thornton. I do. And I think he'll last as long, and I think he's just as effective. And that's where, if we were talking about Joe Thornton when he was 27, he would go exactly on the same path.
I mean, it's sort of the if you build it, he will come scenario where, I mean, if he's looking at teams that are on an upward trajectory that can win a Stanley Cup, and that's, those teams are probably not going to be willing to pay as much as the team that's desperate for like if Buffalo offers him, it's going to be 7 years, it's going to be more than Eichel, it's going to be probably 7 years, $77 million, $11 million per. He might, the only way he takes less or a shorter deal is if it's a team that he thinks he can win a Stanley Cup with that may not have as much room.
Right.
With Toronto, they're going to have to pay Marner. They're going to have to pay Nylander. Maybe, they have most of their guys locked up. But that's the thing that takes the player to take a little less for the goal of winning. And I don't know, like, especially since he's been on a contract for the last, 5 or 6 years with the Islanders, that was totally, I mean, it was the Roman Josi forward contract. It was $5.5 million, and he deserves twice that. So he's going to want to get paid, and then he
want to get a long deal.
And he's only had one knee surgery, right? Like, we're not talking about a guy who's had many injuries.
He's healthy. I mean, he had
in 2012 after the Olympics.
Yeah,
he is streaky, but he still is great. He's a great player. I mean, he's there's not really
out with greater players. Like if he gets
right,
you've seen it in Olympic play. Yeah.
Oh, you have. Yeah, I mean, his skill level is crazy, and I think that at the end of the day, that'll come up. I mean, there's if
he's got 31 goals. I mean,
which is incredible. When you think about it.
Yeah, malign a guy for ending up with possibly 35 to 40.
I know, and people are saying how he's having an off year. It's just like
it's all because of the uncertainty of the contract situation.
Yeah.
And that's ridiculous.
And by the way,
if he signs a deal like an 8 year, say he signs an 8 year deal with the Islanders, and they are thinking about signing and trading him.
Yeah.
The second he signs that deal, he becomes really valuable. And that then you open this up to other teams. Then you open it up to to me, if that's sign and trade, I'm thinking Chicago's in on it. Like I think the Blackhawks get in on it because the Blackhawks will they're a team that maybe
Kane for Tavares.
Yeah, maybe they think about Kane for Tavares. I mean, it's possible. I mean,
the one thing that I think if this and playing on your scenario here, Ak, if this really is something that is in the wheelhouse of Gar Snow and the Islanders of signing him and looking to trade and say, look, we're going to sign you, get your 8 years, but we're going to move you. If they even consider this, what they can't do is do something like we've seen in the past where only a few teams find out because they get pigeonholed. And that would be the concern I'd have if I were an Islanders fan. Remember the return for Joe Thornton when he went to Boston?
Marco Sturm.
Yeah. I mean, what are some other ones like that?
That was more about Joe Thornton being allegedly soft at the time than anything else, where Tavares really does not have that revolving.
Yeah,
I guess Sagan.
Yeah, but the general man, I can't remember. Was the general manager?
That was a situation of staying out all night.
What wasn't the general manager Mike O'Connell at the time? I'm not 100% sure, but all I know is the only team that he talked to was San Jose. That was the report.
It was incredible.
Yeah, that won't happen with Tavares. There's nobody. A, he's squeaky clean. B, he's got 600 something points. He's almost a point a game for his career.
I'm comparing.
Never been great.
I'm comparing how the GMs looked at things, though, right, Russ? It's the idea that you get pigeonholed. When Phaneuf was dealt,
every GM will want him, Peter.
Exactly, that's my point. And the point is
I mean, you're not making your point clear. I don't get.
Well, no, the point is Gar Snow can't fall in the trap of what he wants. Right, he's got to open it up to everyone and create a bit more. And if I'm an Islanders fan,
you don't have to open it up to everybody for a player like Johnson.
He'll move him to the West, though. He will do that. He will move him to the West if he signs and trades him because he will not. You want to keep him. He will keep him away from the East. I do believe that.
Kevin Allen made the point on Friday, and I think it's pertinent here is the fact that there are only 2 or 3 teams in the league that are probably going to be capable of fitting him in. And I buy that. I think the 2 or 3, maybe 4 teams are the teams that we mentioned, because, New Jersey's got cap space. Toronto can make cap space. Buffalo does. Detroit does. Vegas does.
Unless it's a sign and trade, though. If it's a sign and trade, that changes.
Doesn't matter. Unless you're giving back salary to the Islanders.
Which and the Islanders, that's what the Islanders, if I'm the Islanders, that's what I really want to do. Like if I'm the Islanders, that's what I have. I want to get. I have to get it.
Tavares is going to be calling the shots or he's not going to sign.
Exactly. And how does it behoove John Tavares to say, okay, I want to go to the Buffalo Sabres, but here's the trade, Jack Eichel for John Tavares.
No. I'm saying
he wants to go to play with Jack Eichel. He doesn't want to have to trade him.
No, I'm talking more about like the Patrick Kane scenario. That's the kind of situation that I think that because of the Islanders, then at least you can then you can sell that to your fan base. You can say, okay, we picked up somebody else. Where the Blackhawks can then turn around and sell that as well. So, and obviously that you can't. He knows that by going to Chicago, they can't afford to have him, Taves, and Kane. So that's not.
Yeah. That's swapping dollars. That doesn't help the Blackhawks any more than they have now. They're just trading problems.
And at that point, John Tavares, I mean, if he signs a deal to get traded someplace else, the last thing on his mind is, the Islanders fans and what's good for the Islanders. He's concerned about where he's going, how good that team is, and why would he want to have that team give up assets, the one that he's going to, because those assets make them stronger and make them more of a chance to be a winner. And that's why I think the likelihood of a sign and trade is minuscule, because why it would weaken the team he's going to.
Now, you want to hear? I'm going to throw a dark horse out there just for giggles.
Okay.
Columbus Blue Jackets.
Yeah, I mean, they could get involved in this.
They've got $12 million in cap space coming up off the books this year.
Yeah, but he would probably want to know, are you re-signing Sergei Bobrovsky? Because if not, I'm not coming.
Right. Or is John Tortorella going to be your coach for another 3 or 4 years?
He might thrive under Tortorella.
No, he might.
Thrive. He could thrive under Tortorella, but the bigger question is Bobrovsky. And if he's not locked up, I'm not going somewhere where the best goalie that they have and have ever had is on one more year of a deal.
Yeah, I mean,
well, yeah, but I mean,
That's
know
a
what?
big deal.
Russ, it is a big deal. But I also can think that if you're Tavares, you can find that kind of logic in any player on a certain team because of what he costs.
Yeah,
any team who takes him is going to have to make a sacrifice.
But he's not going to get stuck in a bad goalie situation again. I guarantee it. Pat Brisson will not let that happen to a client. I guarantee it.
Yeah, we probably should get out of here. Unfortunately, guys, I'm sorry I had to jump so quickly, but it's a great conversation. We're going to talk a lot more about it, I'm sure.
I have a feeling we're going to be talking about this a lot until before.
Yeah, it's not going to go away. And I know I really do. This is solid sources that are talking to me about this Toronto situation. So we have to keep on it for sure and see what happens, because it's definitely one of those things that I do believe is being discussed. And I do think the more, as much as the more this goes on, I get a feeling that Tavares is leaving, and it's a tough spot. It's the first time, I've really felt that way in the whole situation.
Yeah. I started to feel that way yesterday about, I originally said 60-40 about a week ago, and I'm going about 70-30, and it's dropping. That he's not.
Yeah, I think 70-30 is about right now, and not that it can't be saved, but it's going to be tough. I remember that the buzz. It's just hockey, guys. We will talk to you tomorrow.